What's the difference between advice and advise? That's what Shahnaz on YouTube would like to know, and that's what we're doing in this learner's question. So, advice with a C is an uncountable noun. That's A-D-V-I-C-E. And notice the S sound, advice. It means an opinion, recommendation, or suggestion by someone that you should do something in a certain situation. It's commonly followed by the prepositions about or on. For example, you need my advice about advice. See what I did? Advice strongly collocates with the verbs give and take. You can give advice or you can take someone's advice. For example, my friend gave me some relationship advice, but I thought it was bad, so I didn't take it. You can do something on someone's advice. For example, on my father's advice, I became a teacher, but I really wanted to be a lion tamer. It can be followed by an infinitive verb. For example, John, look out for that lion! My advice is to call the doctor first thing in the morning. Ooh. And of course, as an uncountable noun, we can make it countable by using a piece of advice. I have 3 pieces of advice for you. Brush, floss, and use mouthwash every day. Okay, this is a good time for me to remind you about the Learner's Questions playlist. All your favorite Learner's Questions in one easy to access place. Just click on the link and you'll go straight through to our YouTube playlist. Who knows, maybe your question has already been answered. And if you have a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, at the end of this video, there is a full summary slide with all of the information that I've mentioned. Advise is a regular verb. That's A-D-V-I-S-E, and notice the Z sound, advise. It basically means give advice. In other words, give someone your opinion, suggestion, or recommendation as to what they should do in a certain situation. Its prepositions are on or about. So now I'll advise you on advise. Second time, I did it again. You can advise something. For example, when working with lions, I advise fear. Lots of fear. You can advise someone to do something. For example, my father advised me to choose a different career. You can advise someone against doing something. For example, in the cage, I advised against making any sudden movement. Finally, you can advise that. For example, circus masters everywhere advise that people stop disturbing lions. They recommend trying gorillas instead. Thank you very much for your question, Shahnaz. I hope you found the answer useful. If anyone else out there has a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. I'll see you next time on Learner's Questions. Bye, guys. What's the difference between fault, flaw, and weakness? That's what Helen wants to know, and that's what we're doing on this Learner's Questions. Fault is a noun which means a mistake or problem in something. We commonly refer to technical faults, mechanical faults, and electrical faults when talking about machinery or computers. For example, the train was delayed due to a mechanical fault. Fault can also be used to talk about who is to blame for a mistake. You will often hear people say, "It's your fault, it's his fault, it's her fault," or "It wasn't my fault." For example, "It is completely my fault that this video is so awesome. I do not apologize." Finally, fault can be used in reference to what we believe is a negative part of somebody's personality or character. But don't judge anybody too harshly, because remember, we all have our faults. Except me. Now for the noun flaw. A flaw is a mark or a blemish which spoils something's appearance. Ew. For example, this copy of the book has a tiny printing flaw on the cover, which makes it very rare and very valuable. A flaw can also be a minor fault or weakness in something, making it less valuable or less effective. And this is particularly common with thinking or reasoning words. We can talk about a flaw in an idea, a flaw in an argument, a flaw in a concept, a flaw in a design. For example, it's a nice idea, but it has a serious flaw in it. Finally, we can talk about a flaw in someone's character, or a character flaw. For example, my only character flaw is that I'm very short-tempered. Okay, let's stop for a second so I can tell you about the Learner's Questions playlist. Every episode of Learner's Questions is already there for you, and if you have a question, maybe the answer is there already. So go and have a look. If you have a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, at the end of the video, there is a full summary slide. Now let's talk about the noun weakness, which is an area of something that lacks resilience or strength. For example, vampires have several weaknesses: garlic, sunlight, religious iconography, or a stake through the heart. Like fault and flaw, a weakness can be something that makes something else less attractive or less effective. For example, in my opinion, the weakness of texting is that it doesn't communicate body language, which is so important. Finally, like fault and flaw, weakness can also be used to describe a problem in someone's character. For example, their love of money is a worrying weakness, in my opinion. Thank you very much for your question, Helen. I hope I answered it for you. If you have a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, as soon as I finish this, there is a full summary slide. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time on Learner's Questions. Bye, everybody. What's the difference between the verbs lie and lay? That's why Alejandra emailed us, and that's what we're talking about on this Learner's Question. Okay, our first verb is lie. The past tense is lay, and the past participle is lain. Lie means to move into a horizontal or flat position, as you would do if you were going to bed. For example, if you don't feel well, lie on the bed. The verb lie also means be in a particular place. If something lies somewhere, it is somewhere. For example, the clothes lay all over the floor. Or, my home lies 5 miles east of London. In this way, using lie for place, we can talk about where blame or responsibility lies. Blame or responsibility lies with someone. So, for example, the blame lies with him, but as a manager, the responsibility lies with you. In the same way, and formally speaking now, you can use lie to talk about the place where a person is buried. For example, Charles Darwin and Isaac Newton lie in Westminster Abbey. Okay, now let's talk about the verb lie, the past tense of which is lied, and the past participle of which is lied. When you lie, you speak falsely. You lie to someone about something or about doing something. For example, he lied to his teacher about doing his homework so he didn't get in trouble. Naughty. Unfortunately, lying is a pretty common occurrence, and as a result, we have lots of fixed phrases that you can use to talk about it. So you can lie your way into something. You can lie your way out of something. You can tell a bare-faced lie. You can lie through your teeth, or to emphasize that you're telling the truth, you can say, no word of a lie. Okay, let's stop for a second so I can tell you all about the Learner's Questions playlist. Yes, all of your favorite Learner's Questions in one easy-to-use place. Just click the link and you'll be taken straight through. Who knows, maybe your question is already there and the answer is waiting for you to pick it up. And if you have a question for Learner's Question, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, immediately after I finish speaking, there's a full summary slide with all the information you need to know on it. So make sure to check it out. Now let's talk about the verb lay, the past tense of which is laid, and the past participle is laid. When you lay something, you put it down in a horizontal or flat position, often carefully. For example, I laid the baby in her cot. There you go. Do not confuse this. When you lie, you put yourself in a flat or horizontal position. When you lay something, you put it in a flat or horizontal position. For example, I laid the baby on the bed, and then I lay next to the baby to sleep. Because lay means put something down, we can talk about laying things like carpet or railway track, or in a metaphorical way, we can lay a dead person to rest. So, for example, Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin were laid to rest in Westminster Abbey. The verb lay can also mean prepare. We talk about laying the table for dinner or laying a place for someone. For example, Mom, how many places do I need to lay at the table for lunch? You can talk about laying a fire. That's where you make a fire ready to burn. Or we can talk about laying a trap. For example, the hunter laid 3 traps in the hopes of catching some dinner. And of course, any animal which can push an egg out of its body lays that egg. Thank you very much for your email, Alejandra. I hope we answered your question. If anybody else out there has a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, there is a full summary slide coming just after I finish speaking. I'll see you next time on Learner's Questions. Bye, everybody. What are the differences between peak, and peak? That's what Farshid on YouTube would like to know, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this Learner's Question. Okay, let's talk about peek. That's P-E-E-K. When you peek at something, you take a quick look at it, often sneakily so as not to be seen. For example, you know when you see someone that you really, really like, but you don't want them to see you looking at them? Well, she peeked at him over her textbook. Oh. We often talk about peeking at something or someone, peeking over something like a wall. You can peek through the curtains, and you can peek into somebody's window. The verb peek also means protrude. If something peeks, it can be partially seen from behind something. This paper is peeking from my pocket. Or, how did you find me? I saw your shoes peeking from under the curtain. Now the word peek, P-E-A-K, has lots of meanings because it's applicable in a wide range of contexts. It basically means the highest, strongest, or most extreme point of something. The highest point in a graph, the tip of a mountain, or the busiest time. For example, the peak of this graph shows you shouldn't travel to the peak of the mountain during peak times. Peak is also a verb, and it means reach the highest point. So you can peak a mountain, or I've peaked, said the actor after collecting his Oscar. Although that means that the only way is down. Okay, let's stop for a second so I can take a breather, because all this explaining is tiring work. Why not take the opportunity while I've paused to leave us a like or give us an example sentence in the comments below. We would love to see the language that you've learned so far. Remember, if you have a question for Learners Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget also that at the end of the video, there is a summary slide with all the information printed on it for you to read in your own time. Finally, we have pique, P-I-Q-U-E. Now, it's a verb and a noun, and it's not very common, but it's still used in two very nice expressions. First of all, you can be in a fit of pique. This means become irritated because someone has been rude to you or insulted your pride. For example, she left the room in a fit of pique because they insulted her work. Secondly, you can pique someone's interest or curiosity. That means make them interested or curious. For example, these new inventions have really piqued my interest. Okay, Farshid on YouTube, thank you very much for writing to us. I hope that has answered your question. If you have a question for us on Learners Questions, there's the email, you know what it is, and don't forget there is a summary slide coming immediately after this. See you next time, guys. This week's learner question comes from Marita in Spain, who asks, could you explain the difference between pop in, pop out, and pop round? Okay, Marita, we'll do our best. Now, these three pieces of language you've chosen are phrasal verbs. That means they are a verb combined with a preposition. In this context, the verb pop means go somewhere for a short period of time. If you pop out, you leave the building that you are in, possibly your house or your office, and maybe you're going to run an errand. So you might collect some milk, post a letter, or go and have some lunch. For example, I'm just popping out to get some milk. I'll be back in a minute. Pop in has the opposite meaning. This means you go inside a building for a short period of time. For example, oh, wait a minute, I need to pop in this shop and buy some toothpaste. And we also use pop in when we visit someone in a very informal way. So, oh, you're home on Saturday, I'll pop in and see you. It's in this kind of situation that we also use pop round, although pop round puts more of a focus on the traveling. So for example, Sarah, why won't you pop round and have a cup of tea? I haven't seen you in ages. Remember that being a phrasal verb, we can change the preposition to suit the context. Two slightly different examples would be, I need to pop up on the roof and fix a satellite dish, or, are you looking for John? He's just popped downstairs to speak to Tim. I hope that answers your question, Marita. Thank you very much for writing to us. If anybody else out there has a question about English, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. Please remember to include learners' questions in the subject box and your name and the country that you're from. For more information, you can go to our website, bbclearningenglish.com. I'll see you next time on Learners Questions. Thanks for tuning in. Bye. What's the difference between remember, remind, recall, and recollect? That's what Augustine from Spain wants to know, and that's what we're doing on this Learners Questions. The verb remember is about having a memory about something. It's kind of complicated and it has lots of different verb patterns, so let's go through them together. First, there's remember plus the object. For example, ooh, I remember this music from yesterday. Then there's remember plus a question word or that. For example, I suddenly remembered that I had forgotten to lock the windows of my house. Then there's remember plus ing. This is where you remember something that you did before. So first the action and then remember. For example, I remember making my first Learners Questions video. It was a little while ago now. And then there's remember plus the infinitive. This is where you remember now to do something in the future. So first remember and then the action. For example, I must remember to make another Learners Questions video tomorrow. Remind means make someone remember, and like remember, it has a few verb patterns. So we can talk about remind plus question word or that. For example, the teacher reminded the class what was considered acceptable behavior. We can talk about remind plus somebody plus an infinitive. For example, I have an app on my phone that reminds me to pick up my dry cleaning. And finally, something can remind somebody of something. And in this way we mean spark an associated memory. For example, oh, that smell reminds me of the cake my grandmother used to make. Grandma cake. Okay, let's stop for a second so I can tell you all about the Learner's Questions playlist. Yes, all of your favorite Learner's Questions in one easy to access place. If you have a question for Learner's Questions, maybe the answer is there already, so go check it out. If you have a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, as soon as I've finished talking, there is a full summary slide. Recall and recollect are both verbs that can just mean remember. And, like remember, they have a couple of verb patterns in common. So we can talk about recall or recollect plus that or a question word. For example, I don't recall what I did with my keys. Then I recollected that I'd left them at work. We can also talk about recall or recollect plus ing. So, do you recall seeing my last Learner's Questions episode? Do you recollect learning about situation, position, and condition? If not, go check it out. Finally, recall can be different from remember, remind, and recollect, because recall doesn't always just mean remember, it can mean remember and communicate. For example, at his retirement party, the professor recalled some of the best moments in his career to his colleagues. Thank you very much for your question, Augustine. I hope I answered it for you. If you have a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, at the end of this video, there's a full summary slide. So make sure you check it out. I'll see you next time on Learner's Questions. Bye, everybody. What's the difference between see, look, and watch? That's why Shanu emailed us, and that's what we're doing on this Learner's Question. Everybody knows that the verb see means perceive something or receive information through your eyes. For example, if you look over here, you will see me. Don't forget that see in this meaning is a state verb. There's no ing, just I see Dan. But did you know that the verb see can also mean imagine? You can see something happening, see someone as something, or see yourself as something. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? In 5 years' time, I see myself as a serious news reporter. Now for the verb look. Look is a regular verb, so look, looked, looked, and notice the t. When we look, we direct our eyes to see something. For example, if you look over here, you'll see, wait for it, me. Okay, let's stop for a second so I can check if you have heard about the Learner's Questions playlist. All your favorite Learner's Questions in one easy to access place. If you have a question about English, maybe the answer is there. So click on the link and go there straight away. If you have a question for Learner's Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, as soon as I finish speaking, there is a full summary slide. Look can also mean appear, and it's usually followed by an adjective. So a book can look interesting, or food can look delicious. If we combine look with the prepositions at, into, or over, we get the meaning examine or investigate. For example, police are looking into reports of fraud at a local bank. Now let's talk about watch. Watch is a regular verb, so watch, watched, watched, and there's that t again. If you watch something, you fix your vision on it to observe it. For example, you are watching Me. Hooray! Watch can also mean be careful. We talk about watching for something, watching out for something, or watch plus a question word. For example, watch what you say about him. He sees everything. Finally, watch can mean guard or protect, and we might say watch or watch over. For example, oh, could you just watch my bag for a second while I go to the loo, please, please? Thank you for your email, Shanu. I hope the answer was useful to you. If you have a question for Learners Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, immediately after I finish speaking, there is a full summary slide with all the information that you need to know. Thank you very much for joining me on this Learners Questions. I'll see you next time, everybody. Bye. What's the difference between situation, position, and condition? That's what Gitti from Iran wants to know, and that's what we're doing on this Learners Questions. Condition is a noun that describes the physical state of something or someone. We usually talk about things being in good, bad, or terrible condition. For example, I bought this top 3 years ago and it's still in good condition. Look how white that F is. Conditions as a plural can refer to the environment. We talk about doing something under good, bad, or terrible conditions. For example, the storm meant that we had to abandon climbing the mountain under such difficult conditions. And in this way, we can talk about living conditions or working conditions. That's the environment in which we live or work. So, for example, this office needs more light to meet basic working conditions. Finally, we can talk about a condition or conditions needing to be met or satisfied. And that means that something must be done before something else can happen. For example, in order to get this job, you need to meet certain conditions. Qualifications, for example. Situation is a noun that refers to a specific set of conditions in a particular place at a particular time. After a natural disaster, for example, we might say that the situation in the country is not good. We often combine other words with situation to create more specific contexts. We can talk about the economic or financial situation. And of course, don't forget about situation comedies, or sitcoms as they're commonly known. These are TV shows that put a bunch of characters in a specific place at a specific time. Okay, this is a great time for me to remind you to check out the Learners Questions playlist. All of your favorite Learners Questions in one easy to access place on our YouTube channel. If you have a question for Learners Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, there is a full summary slide immediately after this video. Position is a noun and a verb that refers to the way or where something is placed. For example, the position of this F is on my chest. But we can also refer to positioning something somewhere. For example, please position the flowers on a window ledge to get maximum sunlight. In another way, position can refer to opinion. Your position is your opinion on something. For example, my position is that recycling is essential and everybody's responsibility. Finally, position can mean job or role. When writing to apply for a job, you might write, I am writing to apply for the position of producer as advertised on your website. Thank you for your question, Gitti. I hope the answer was useful. If you have a question for Learners Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, as soon as this video finishes, there is a full summary slide. Thanks very much for joining me on this Learners Questions. I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. How do we use tough, rough, and stiff? That's what Ujeli sent us an email for, and that's what we're doing on this Learners Questions. Alright, now before we get started, it's worth noting that these three words have lots of meanings, and we're just going to cover the most common ones. So for more information on them and other confusing words, make sure to check out our website, bbclearningenglish.com. Okay, tough is an adjective, and its noun is toughness. Something which is tough is very difficult to damage or very durable. For example, this cup is very tough. Tough can also mean difficult or challenging. We talk about things like tough questions, tough circumstances, or a tough read. My maths exam, for example, was very tough. It was a tough exam. We can talk about food being tough. That is, food which is difficult to eat or to chew. You know, when you get like a really badly cooked steak and it's like... Now let's talk about rough. Rough is also an adjective, and its noun is roughness. Something which is rough is not smooth. We talk about things like rough cloth, rough skin, or a rough surface. For example, have you ever been licked by a cat? Their tongues are very rough. Okay, let's just stop for a second so I can remind you to click subscribe and hit that bell so you stay up to date with all of the latest Learners Questions. You wouldn't want to miss out on anything, would you? If you have a question for Learners Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, at the end of this video, there is a full summary slide with all of the mentioned information on it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Rough can also mean not exact. For example, you might make a rough copy of something like a drawing or notes, or you can give someone a rough estimate. For example, what time will you be here? Well, probably around 4, but it's just a rough estimate. Rough can also mean difficult or challenging. We can talk about rough circumstances or having a rough time. For example, John's having a rough time. He just lost his job. Now let's talk about stiff. Stiff is also an adjective, and its noun is stiffness. Something which is stiff is not flexible or not easily moved. We talk about things like stiff card, a stiff collar on a shirt, or when you take your jeans out of the wash and put them on, they've gone stiff. It makes it very difficult to walk in them. And in this way, we can talk about stiff muscles. This is when you have a part of your body, a muscle, that doesn't want to bend or move. For example, if you sleep in a funny position and then wake up, with a stiff neck. Oh! Stiff can also mean difficult or severe. We can talk about stiff punishment in relation to a crime, or stiff competition. For example, there was a lot of stiff competition at the job interview, but I think I got it. Thank you for your question, New Jelly. I hope the answer has been useful. If anybody else out there has a question for Learners Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, as soon as I've finished speaking, there is a full summary slide with all the information I've already mentioned. I'll see you next time on Learners Questions. What's the difference between win, earn, and gain? That's why Esra emailed us, and that's what we're doing in this Learners Questions. Win is an irregular verb, so win, won, have won. It means achieve first place in a competition, contest, fight, argument, bet, or attempt at something. For example, let's play a game. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, ha! You lose, I win. Nah. Win can also mean get something that other people are also trying to get. And this is especially useful in a business context where we talk about winning an order, winning a contract, or winning the right to do something. For example, the most successful bid will win the contract to build the bridge. Win can also mean gain the support of someone. We talk about winning support, winning approval, winning the heart of someone, or winning someone over. For example, the politician's speech won over the hostile crowd and they started cheering. Now let's talk about earn, earned, and have earned, and notice the d. When you earn, you receive an amount of money in exchange for your work. People earn an amount of money, but never ask them about it. Or a person can earn a living, which is make money to survive. For example, I could never earn a living as a translator because I'm not fluent in any other language. Professional monkey though. In a business context, earn means receive as profit. Companies earn, shares earn, and accounts earn. For example, so far the movie has earned 3 million billion squillion jillion pounds. Not a real number. Alright, let's take a break for a second so I can make sure that you have subscribed and clicked that bell to stay up to date with all of our latest Learners Questions. We wouldn't want you missing out now, would we? And if you have a question for Learners Questions, you know what to do. Email learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, as soon as I finish talking, there is a full summary slide. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Earn can also mean receive something deserved. We can talk about things like earning praise, earning respect, or earning your place at a particular organization. And quite frankly, after this video, I think I've earned a nice cup of tea. Now let's talk about gain, gained, and have gained. And there's that d sound again. When we gain, we get or obtain something positive. We can talk about gaining support, gaining an advantage, or gaining confidence, for example. In my first video, I was quite nervous, but since then, I have gained confidence. Gain can also mean increase in amount. Things gain height, they gain weight, they gain speed, or they gain value, for example. Actually, my jeans are a little bit tight today. Oh no! Have I gained weight? No! Finally, we can talk about something gaining ground or gaining traction or popularity. And this means becoming more popular and more accepted by society. Things like ideas or movements, for example. Veganism is gaining ground at the moment as more and more people become vegan. Thank you very much for your email, Ezra. I hope I answered your question. If you have a question for Learners Questions, you can email us on learning.english@bbc.co.uk. And don't forget, as soon as I finish talking, there is a full summary slide with all the information you need to know. I'll see you next time on Learners Questions. Thanks for joining me. Bye everybody.